Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to understanding the insights that, well, really matter. Today, we're unpacking something pretty foundational for navigating life's demanding roles, whether you're juggling studies, friendships, career stuff, or just trying to figure things out. It's all about how you treat yourself when the challenges and imperfections inevitably pop up. So our deep dive today looks into a really powerful chapter from Kristin Neff's book, Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. Now, this specific chapter focuses on self-compassionate parenting, but honestly, the wisdom in it goes way beyond that. We're basically extracting the core ideas you can use to thrive. We'll show you how self-compassion can, transform how you handle your own mistakes, guide others, manage intense emotions, giving you practical tools for your own journey.
Yeah, and what's truly significant here is that this chapter frames self-compassion not just as some soft feel-good idea, but as an essential tool for building resilience and for improving how we interact with the world. There's a great quote from Joseph Chilton Pierce. What we are teaches the child far more than what we say, so we must be what we want our children to become. And that's not just for parents, right? It applies to anyone in a position of influence, or really anyone just striving to live authentically. Think about those demanding roles you take on, like, say, navigating college life. Self-compassion can make those paths feel significantly less daunting.
Definitely. Let's start with something we all know. We all mess up. We all get it wrong sometimes. And how we respond in those moments of imperfection, well, that makes all the difference. The chapter shares this really vivid story about a mom named Carol. She was rushing, juggling a million things, and she completely overcooked spaghetti for her kids, like total mush. And then her eldest daughter, kind of frustrated, even compared her cooking to her ex-husband's new wife, who's apparently a gourmet chef. Ouch. Now, in that moment, Carol felt that familiar sting, that feeling of inadequacy, that inner voice just saying, I can't get anything right.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part. Instead of just staying stuck there, she consciously shifted gears. Carol had been practicing self-kindness, so she reminded herself that motherhood involved juggling multiple balls in the air, and it was inevitable that one would occasionally drop. And crucially, she told herself that overcooking spaghetti was not exactly a sign of a fatally flawed character. Makes sense, right?
Her solution, just order pizza. And the surprising bonus, her daughter actually whispered, Cool Jan never lets us have pizza. So this story, it isn't just about pasta. It's about that pivot from self-criticism to, creative problem solving. It makes me wonder, what are your overcooked spaghetti moments? Maybe a missed deadline, a presentation that went sideways, or a social thing that felt awkward. How do you talk to yourself right then?
Carol's experience really shows how self-compassion isn't just about feeling better. It's actually a strategic internal move. It unlocks better responses. We all make mistakes, we snap, we forget things, we might see something we regret later. It happens. Acknowledging this is just part of the shared human experience, well, it allows us to admit our imperfections and genuinely apologize when we need to. The author really stresses why that harsh self-criticism is so detrimental, especially when we're trying to learn or improve. Just compare that self-flagellating thought, how stupid of me, I'm so irresponsible, with a more compassionate internal dialogue like, how annoying, I forgot to fill up the car. I've been pretty busy lately, so I guess it's not surprising that it slipped my mind. See the difference.
Oh, absolutely. One just spirals you down, the other acknowledges it and moves on.
Exactly. That subtle shift creates space for problem solving, not just paralysis. And ultimately, modeling this kind of self-compassion, even for your own small slip-ups, is incredibly powerful for developing this skill in yourself and, frankly, in anyone who looks to you or learns from you.
Right. And that brings us to a practical technique from the chapter. We can adapt this for anyone, including you, maybe as a student. It's called having compassion for our mistakes. The idea is pretty simple, actually. Just take a few minutes each day, maybe at the end of the day, to reflect on any mistakes you might have made, big or small. Then consciously try to be as kind and understanding toward yourself as you would be to a good friend in the exact same situation. You wouldn't yell at your friend, right?
Probably not, no. He'd try to be supportive.
Exactly. So be supportive to yourself. Then think about the repair step. Is there anything you can do to make amends? Maybe it's apologizing to someone for misunderstanding or making up for a missed commitment with a teammate on a project. And then here's a deeper dive. What difficult emotions might have been underneath that behavior?
Yeah.
Was it stress from exams? Frustration with a group project maybe? Or just sheer exhaustion? Give yourself compassion for that underlying pain. You could literally tell yourself, wow, it's hard being a student right now, or this is tough. Acknowledge it.
That acknowledgement is key.
Yeah. And finally, this exercise asks you to think about self-care. How can you maybe ease some of that stress by taking more time for yourself? The chapter calls this a win-win because when you meet your own needs, you're just better equipped to handle everything else life throws at you.
Well, thinking about how we treat ourselves, that naturally leads into how we guide others, doesn't it? And this chapter offers some really profound insights into correcting behavior without causing shame. That's a crucial skill, whether you're, working on a group project, dealing with a roommate, or maybe mentoring someone younger. The research is pretty clear. Continuous criticism, especially from a parent figure, can lead to kids lacking self-compassion later on, and even suffering from anxiety and depression as adults.
Wow, that's serious.
It is, and it often happens because they internalize that critical voice. It becomes their own inner critic. So the core principle here is to always focus on the behavior itself, the specific action, not the person's general character. The goal is to convey that we're all works in progress, We're always learning, and we're not defined by our missteps. An important first step is often validating the emotions before you correct the behavior.
Okay, how does that look in practice?
Well, instead of jumping to, "You are so rude, Neil. Why can't you be nicer to Mary?" When maybe Neil tells his sister to shut up, you might try something like, "I realize you were irritated by having your game interrupted, but you hurt Mary's feelings when you told her to shut up." See? You acknowledge the feeling first.
Right, connects with his experience before pointing out the impact.
Exactly. Or, for that classic roommate issue, the perpetually open honey jar attracting ants, rather than, "You're such a slob. Maybe try. Hey, I know you were distracted by your phone call, but we can't have bugs crawling everywhere."
And yeah, the chapter even suggests a little humor can sometimes help, like, do you really want our kitchen to look like a scene from Attack of the Killer Ants?
Okay, I can see how that lands differently.
It does, because when someone feels understood, rather than just attacked, they're far more likely to actually listen and take responsibility. This also brings up a really important question for ourselves. Are our own reactions sometimes, ego defensive? Are we more worried about what their behavior says about us? Self-compassion helps us respond from a place of wisdom, not personal defense.
That's a really good point. Okay, shifting gears a bit now to something else we all face. Navigating intense emotions, both our own and those of other people. The chapter acknowledges how challenging it can be to deal with big feelings. A child's tantrum is a classic example, but it could be a friend's meltdown or your own internal emotional storm during a stressful exam week. It introduces something called Dr. Rebecca Coleman's Mindful Awareness Parenting, or MAP, program. It's designed to help parents make wise decisions in really difficult situations. And while it's aimed at parents, the underlying mechanics are incredibly relevant for anyone trying to stay centered when emotions run high. Like, say, when your roommate accidentally spills coffee all over your important textbook right before a test.
Right. The psychology at play here is something called affective attunement. It's that sort of instinctive mirroring of someone's emotion, like making a little sad noise if they're sad, and then gently shifting to a soothing tone like, "It's okay, darling." You see, parents do this naturally. This mirroring validates the emotion, and it kind of creates a bridge for them to then regulate to calm down. But here's the really critical insight from the chapter. If a mother with a crying infant feels overwhelmed by her own emotions, she won't be able to help her son calm down.
So you have to manage your own reaction first.
Precisely. And this applies universally. If you are overwhelmed by your own frustration or anxiety or stress, you simply can't effectively help someone else calm down. You can't even really effectively help yourself find a good solution. Self-compassion acts like an anchor in these moments. By responding to our own turbulent emotions with kindness and understanding, we quiet our inner storm first. That puts us in a far better position to respond wisely, whether it's to a friend in distress or just to our own challenges. The chapter tells this great story about Pittman, who's actually a student, and his 3-year-old son, Finn. Finn was acting out really aggressively after a new baby sister arrived. He even peed on the wall and told his dad, "I hate you."
Whoa, intense.
Very. But Pittman, who had been practicing self-compassion, consciously took deep breaths. He gave himself kindness and compassion for how difficult that moment was for him. And that allowed him to see past the behavior to Finn's underlying jealousy and fear. He could then respond with understanding, saying something like, "I know this is hard for you right now, but your mom and I love you more than ever." And apparently, Finn's mood visibly lifted. Pittman was able to move through it with grace and even find some humor in it later.
That's a really powerful example. And it leads us nicely into the second exercise mentioned, taking a time in. Now, while it's originally framed for parents and children, this exercise offers a fantastic framework for your own emotional regulation, too. Those big feelings, whether it's a friend's outburst or maybe your own panic about an upcoming exam, they often stem from feeling misunderstood or just totally overwhelmed. The chapter emphasizes a crucial first step. You have to be calm enough first. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the situation, just pause. Send yourself some compassion for your difficult emotions. Maybe take a few mindful breaths. You could even say to a friend, hey, just give me 30 seconds to gather myself.
That pause is so important.
It really is. Once you're feeling a bit calmer, the time in involves maybe finding a neutral spot, sitting together if it's with someone else, or just sitting with yourself, observing the behavior or your own feelings without judgment, accepting the feelings they are what they are, staying present with them. When ready, you can help describe the feelings either for someone else or yourself. Are you feeling angry, afraid, sad? Naming it can help. And then, crucially, if it's an interaction, you share your own feelings without blame. Like, when you did X, I felt Y arising in me, not you made me feel Y.
Big difference there, taking ownership.
Exactly. Now, imagine applying this time in not just with a kid, but maybe with a friend who's really struggling, or even just with yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed. What would it be like to consciously give your own big feelings that kind of safe, compassionate space just to be acknowledged and understood?
Expanding our view a bit, this chapter makes a really vital connection to adolescence, which, let's face it, mirrors many aspects of the college years, right? This is a time of intense self-evaluation, lots of social comparison. We're constantly asking, am I as good as everyone else? What do other people think of me? Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And this is often coupled with what psychologists call the personal fable, that underlying belief that your experiences are utterly unique, that nobody could possibly understand what you're going through. Mark Twain captured this brilliantly, didn't he? Saying something like, when I was 14, my father was so stupid that I could hardly stand to be around the old man. When I turned 21, I was simply amazed at what this elderly gentleman had learned in only 7 short years.
Haha, yes, perfect.
Well, the research actually reveals a crucial point here. Teens, and by extension, young adults who are deeply immersed in this personal fable, they tend to be less self-compassionate. Why? Because they don't recognize their difficulties as a normal, shared part of just being human. They feel uniquely flawed or alone in their struggles.
Ah, I see the connection. If you think no one else gets it, it's harder to be kind to yourself about it.
Exactly. And this is why self-compassion is so incredibly valuable for you right now, navigating these years. Now, you might be thinking self-compassion sounds a bit soft, a bit hearts and flowersy, maybe not cool when you're facing real-world pressures, deadlines, competition.
Yeah, I could see some people thinking that.
But the chapter is really clear. This isn't about complaining or self-pity or just being self-indulgent and letting yourself off the hook for everything. It's actually a robust way to feel good about yourself that doesn't require feeling superior to others. And that's a critical distinction. Striving for constant high self-esteem often traps us in that endless cycle of social comparison and judgment. Am I better than them? Am I falling short? Self-compassion offers a different path, a way out of that trap.
Okay, that's a really important clarification. It's not weakness, it's a different kind of strength. The chapter then concludes with this incredibly personal and honestly powerful story from the author herself, Kristin Neff, about her son Rowan, who has autism. She describes the immense challenges they faced, Rowan's intense tantrums, issues with incontinence, and her own feelings of guilt after inevitably sometimes snapping under the pressure. Her husband, Rupert, would offer this really compassionate reminder. She couldn't be expected to deal with things perfectly all the time. It wasn't realistic.
That external reminder can be so helpful sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that reminder allowed her to recover, apologize to Rowan if needed, and just try again. They also made it a priority to meet their own needs. They even ended up babysitting for each other because finding other options was so difficult. They knew that giving attention to our own needs helped us stay refreshed and relaxed. But the most profound part, I think, is how Kristin actively modeled self-compassion for Rowan. Rowan had echolalia, a tendency to repeat phrases, so she subtly used this to help shape his internal dialogue with soothing, compassionate words. For instance, when Rowan would spill water, which could trigger intense distress for him, her first response wasn't frustration, but compassion. Poor darling, you spilled the water. It's okay to be upset and frustrated. This is really hard for you right now, isn't it? She named his feelings with kindness.
Validating his experience right there.
Exactly. And then she gently helped him move on, asking a simple question. Do you want to be sad or do you want to be happy? Giving him a choice, a path forward. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Years later, they were at that zoo, and Kristin herself was in a terrible mood after a really frustrating morning. She was just grumpy. And her 8-year-old son, Rowan, turned to her and said, completely unprompted, "It's okay, Mommy. Do you want to be sad or happy?
Wow, full circle.
Right. It's just this incredible testament to the power of modeling. Now, self-compassion, once you cultivate it and share it, truly does come back to you, often from the most unexpected and beautiful places.
That story. It's such a beautiful, tangible illustration of self-compassion in action, isn't it? You see all three core components right there. There's mindfulness, acknowledging the present suffering. You spilled the water. This is hard. Without judgment. There's common humanity, recognizing that it's okay to be upset. These things happen. It's part of life. Frustration is normal. And then there's self-kindness, offering comfort, poor darling, and actively asking that question to shift perspective. Do you want to be sad or do you want to be happy? So this story really invites us to reflect, doesn't it? What kind of internal dialogue are you shaping for yourself day in and day out? How can you learn to ask yourself in those moments of distress or frustration, okay, do I want to stay stuck being sad or angry here, or do I want to try and be happy? And then, importantly, how can you actively seek ways to move towards kindness, towards acceptance, and maybe towards some kind of constructive action?
Yeah, that's the real takeaway. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap those key lessons. Self-compassion, that's far more than just, being nice to yourself. It's a vital skill. It helps you embrace imperfection without that harsh self-criticism. It helps you guide others effectively by focusing on behavior, not character flaws. It's crucial for regulating your own emotions and helping others with theirs. And it's really important for navigating the unique challenges of self-discovery during your formative years, like college. And remember, while our source chapter used parenting as its main context, these principles, acknowledging mistakes with kindness, responding to emotions with wisdom, fostering an internal voice of support, they're truly applicable to every single aspect of your life, especially as you navigate your studies and everything else right now.
Absolutely. And maybe this raises one final question to ponder. Consider that every interaction you have, whether it's with other people or just inside your own head, is actually an opportunity to practice these skills. The self-compassion you cultivate today isn't just for handling your current stresses or assignments. It's a fundamental building block. It's shaping the person you're becoming, and it's influencing the positive impact you can have on the world around you. So how might your life look different, feel different, if you truly committed to being your own kindest, most understanding guide through it all? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.